Hey guys, welcome to this session by Intellipaat. My name is Anirudh, and in this session, we'll begin by taking a look at how you can learn Django. Django is one of the most, if not the most popular web application development frameworks out there. So, in order to learn Django, let's first begin by taking a look at the agenda. So, the agenda for today's video will begin by taking a look at what is Django. Then we'll take a look at why do we use Django. Then we'll take a look at where do we use it. And then we'll take a look at who uses Django. Then we'll learn who can learn Django. And then we'll take a look at the skills required to become a Django developer. And then we'll navigate the pathway to tell you how you can become a professional Django developer. And then at the end of the slides, I will recommend some resources through which you can learn Django. So let's get started. So the first question that comes in our mind is, what is Django? So imagine you wish to create a web application. This web application has all the common functionality that any web application on the internet needs. So functionality like logging the user in, storing the user's data, retrieving it when the user logs in and requests for the data, and some common authorization functionality to make sure that the users do not alter the data of another user. Now, how do you go about building this? You can build the front page of your application using HTML and CSS, but how do you store the data? How do you program a server to get the data from the front end and then store it and apply all the necessary logic? What's even more complicated, if you wish to add new features, do you re-implement these functionalities from scratch or do you use some libraries? And how do you manage all of this? This is where Django comes into play. So what Django does is it allows us to write code that's focused solely on our business logic. Instead of having us rewrite the common functionalities like accessing the database, submitting form requests, accessing the form data, processing it, so on and so forth, Django does all the heavy lifting for us, and all we are left to do with is to focus on what our application needs to do. So Django takes care of much of the common tasks that are needed in a web application. Some of the common tasks that are needed are database access, form validation, user authentication, data serialization. So let's take a look at these. So Django simplifies many of the common tasks that are required in a web application, such as database access. Django comes with an ORM that greatly simplifies the database access. ORM stands for Object Relational Mapper. Now, in case you are not aware what ORM means and how to use it, do not worry about it. Stick with me till the end of the slides and I'll show you resources where you can learn all of this. So broadly speaking, an ORM simply means an abstraction layer, or it makes it easy for our application to interact with the database. In Django, the ORM takes care of all the querying the database and getting the results and then displaying it to the user. So ORM allows you to write your code in Python. Instead of you having to write the SQL queries yourself, you can write the code in Python and the ORM will then take care of all the database access and database access and resource management for you. If you didn't use Django's ORM, then accessing the database could be a very difficult task because you have to make sure that all the resources are properly instantiated, properly closed, all the data that's gotten back from the user is sanitized, so on and so forth. The ORM takes care of this for you. Next, we have form validation. So Django provides an easy way to validate submitted data. The form is one of the most common and one of the most predominant ways how users will enter data into your websites, be it login credentials, when they're signing up, when they're submitting a query, so on and so forth. So Django allows us to validate the data and make sure that the data that enters our application is in the correct format as we intended. Django also comes with a built-in user authentication system. Now, in case you wish to implement your own user authentication system in Django, you can do that. However, the inbuilt user authentication system is quite flexible and it allows you to mold it to your needs. Next, we have data serialization. Serialization may sound like a complicated thing, however, it's a very easy to understand. What it basically means is that it converts data from one format to another format. So in Django's case, you can convert data from the database to a format called JSON, which stands for JavaScript Object Notation. We simply do this to make it easy for us to transfer that data over the internet. Now again, like I said, if in case you are not familiar with JSON, stick with me till the end of the slides and I'll guide you to some resources that will help you learn all of these things. So when all is said and done, why would you use Django, or why would anyone use Django? So Django is among the highest paying skills a developer can have. In India alone, the average per annum salary of a Django developer is around 8 lakh per annum. Similarly, in US, it's over $100,000 per annum. Django jobs are also trending. According to a Stack Overflow developer survey that was conducted this year in 2019, Django was among the top 10 most popular technologies in the world. In the same survey, Django was also among the top 10 most loved technologies in the world. Django's popularity has been in a high rise and will continue to do so in coming years. As we can see that Django is very popular in both startups and MNCs. It's popular in startup because its development model allows us to quickly develop applications and services as are required by a startup. And it's also popular in MNCs because it allows our code base to be very stable. It allows it to be easy to use and easy to deploy. So where do we use it? This could be one of the questions that's popping into your mind, so let's look into that. So have you ever wondered how does Instagram remember who you are when you log into the user, you log in with your user account and the photos that you liked? Similarly, have you ever wondered how does Pinterest manage all its photos and all the pins that you have used on the site? Well, Django is the reason that these websites are able to do this. So Django is mostly used to build two kinds of applications, a web application or a RESTful web API. A web application is just some software that is running in your browser over the internet. So for example, think of facebook.com, instagram.com, Pinterest. These are all web applications. These are software that are running in your browser over the internet. Next, let's look at RESTful web APIs. So a web API could be considered a complicated topic. However, the simplest way to understand it is simply a system that will return some data provided you gave it proper requests. So imagine a scenario where you have a service, let's say a photo sharing application, and you wish to create applications for Android operating system, the iOS operating system, and the web. So you have to create 3 kinds of applications for targeting a broad user space. However, how will these applications get data? Instead of writing a server for all of these applications and then connecting them to separate databases which are synchronized, what you can do is create a RESTful web API. These will ask that RESTful web API for some data, and provided the request is valid, the API will return back the data that they need. So who uses Django? Like I said, Django is one of the most popular web application development frameworks, so stands to reason that some of the most popular companies must be using it. So these are some of the companies that use it. Companies like National Geographic, Mozilla, Pinterest, Instagram, MIT, so on and so forth. And there are many more. An interesting thing to note here is that the users of Django are working in quite different domains. So as you can see, Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook, all of them are social networking websites, whereas MIT is an educational institute and Discuss is an online commenting platform. So if you are wondering whether your use case will be sufficiently tackled by Django, you do not have to worry about it, since many of the big companies that work in quite different domains have been able to use Django for their needs. So who can learn Django? Or to put it simply, what are the prerequisites that a person need to know in order to begin learning Django? So if you wish to learn Django, these are the three things that you should know. Things like HTML, World Wide Web, and programming. Now, if you are unfamiliar with any of these things, do not worry about it. Just stick with me till the end of the slides and I'll tell you about some resources where you can learn these as well. So you need to know HTML because whatever application you create using Django, at the end of the day, it's going to output HTML, which will be returned to the browser, which will then render it to the user. So any website that you have ever visited uses HTML. It's the bedrock of the modern internet. So you need to know what HTML is, and you need to know the basics of how HTML works and how to write a basic page. You don't need to be an expert in these technologies. Similarly, for the World Wide Web, what you need to know is the request response cycles, the status codes, really basic stuff. You don't need to know the ins and outs of the entire World Wide Web. And you need to know programming because since you'll be using Django, you need to program a server, and for that you need to have some basic understanding of how to write code and how to program something. So let's take a look at the skills that are required to become a Django developer. So these are the skills that you should have in order to become a Django developer. Now again, if any of these skills sound a bit esoteric to you and you think you don't have proper understanding of these, you can just stick with me till the end of the slides and I'll show you how you can go about learning these things. So the first thing is basics of Python programming. Now since Django is written in Python, it stands to reason that you know the Python programming language. Again, you do not need to know the ins and outs of the language. You do not have to be an expert in Python, but you do need to know the basics. That way it will be easy for you to get started with Django. Then there's object-oriented programming. Now object-oriented programming is a complicated topic to explain, but to put it simply, it's just a way to structure your code in a way that it gets separated into smaller, more manageable pieces called modules. These modules are created using classes and objects, which are concepts in object-oriented programming. Then there's sequences and file operations. You do need to know file operations so that you can log user requests or log some other kind of data that you wish to in a file. Those files can then be later analyzed and look for patterns or for security threats, so on and so forth. Now we also need to know testing and debugging. This is where Django shines because Django comes in with a testing framework of itself. So if you wish to write code and write test for it, Django has the capability of doing so. Testing allows your application to be very robust, and debugging also allows your application to be error-free and robust and scalable. And Django allows you to do all of that. Now you also need to know regular expressions. Regular expressions, if you're unaware, are basically ways to create patterns and check if that pattern matches a text or a block of text. Now, you do not need to be a master at regular expressions. In fairness, regular expressions are quite hard to learn in depth, but you do need to know the basics. That way it will be helpful for you so that you can use them in your Django application. You need to know the basic database operations because every application that you create will be interacting with the database. In every way, shape or form, every application on the internet uses one database or the other. So if you wish to log the user in, you need to know if the user has authentic credentials, and for that you need to move into the database and look at the user's credentials, and if they match, then the user enters into the site. Similarly, there are many ways you can use databases in your web application. So you need to know the basics such as creating a table, inserting a data, deleting data, just the bare minimum, the basics. Do not need to know it completely from inside out. Next, you need to know the basics of HTTP. HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. It's a protocol that is used on the internet to transfer requests and get back response. So you need to know how the request response cycle works in the HTTP, what are headers, what are response codes, what do these response codes mean. Just the basic stuff, nothing too in-depth. And you need to know HTML templates as well. So templates basically allow you to define some structure of a page, and that page has some slots left blank. Then dynamically you can generate some data and fill in the blanks. So for instance, suppose you log into your Facebook account and your friend logs into his Facebook account. And if you look at the pages, you'll see that both of the pages have similar structure, just the data inside that structure is different. So instead of his username in your account, your username would be coming up, and so on and so forth. So this is done by HTML templating, and you need to know this so that you can create your own templates and bind data to them using Django. Then there's data submission through forms. So like I said, forms are one of the most important topics in a web application, because this is how your user will be submitting data to you. You need to know how to process those forms. You need to know how to extract data from the form request that has been sent back from the user, and you need to process them and find out if they are in the right format, so on and so forth, so that you can save them into the database. But before saving them into the database, you do need to validate them. So if you have a business rule that says that the password that the user enters should be at least 8 characters, and if the user submits a password that's less than 8 characters or does not match any of the rules that you have defined, then you need to make sure that that happens. The user gets back the response that the password was invalid, or the password had less than 8 characters, so on and so forth. Now this is what data validation means, and data validation is one of the most important topics for developing a web application, because you do not want your database compromised with invalid data, which could be later very difficult to eradicate. And Django helps with this. And finally, serialization. As I've already mentioned, serialization is the process of converting data from one format into another format. Now, in Django's case, since we're working with the web, the data is usually converted into either XML or JSON. Predominantly, people use JSON because it's very easy to convert to JSON, very easy to parse, and it's very human readable and compact. So when we talk about serialization, we basically means converting data from a format to JSON so that it can be transferred over the internet. Now let's look at one of the most important topics in our agenda: how to become a Django developer. So this is the kind of framework that I would recommend if you wish to become a Django developer. First, you need proper training with the right practice, real-time project experience, and a certification. So when I say proper training, I mean training that's given by experts so that you can learn from them. You can acquire the skill sets that we have discussed in our previous slides, and after acquiring the skill sets, you have to develop the capability of applying those skill sets into problems that you face. And by right practice, you need to learn the concepts that are required for you to become a developer, and then you should be able to solve any assignment that's given to you based on those concepts. You need real-time project experience. This is one of the ways that you can show the employer or a potential employer that you don't not only just know the things that you need to know, you also have experience working with the technologies and building something real. The employer can then look at the things that you have built, the real-time projects, and get a sense of how well versed are you with these technologies. And finally, certification. Now, certification is really important nowadays because everyone who can learn Django is not going to be shortlisted by a company. Certifications allow the companies to figure out who they can shortlist, who they can call, who they can follow up. So certification allows you to get a better chance at a job, allows you to stand out of the crowd. And since you wish to get certified, you can get much better job opportunities than a person who isn't certified. And since you have stuck with me till the end of the slides, let me show you what I promised. I'll show you the resources that I would recommend for you to learn. But before, let me share you a quote from Mr. Stephen Hawking. And before that, let me show you a coupon code. So YouTube 30 is a coupon code that is valid for today. So if any of you, dear viewers, wish to buy a course from Intellipaat, you can use this code and get flat 30% off on any course that you wish to use. So the quote that I wanted to show you was, nothing is better than reading and gaining knowledge, gaining more and more knowledge. This was quoted by Mr. Stephen Hawking. So if you wish to learn more about Django or any other technology, we have lots of videos on current trending technologies on our YouTube channel. You can check them out. You can take a look at them and learn a lot from them. If you are a person who likes reading a lot, you can also take a look at our blogs and tutorials. They are filled with code samples and explanation for all the technologies that you need to know. This will also help you gain a better and more in-depth understanding of the technology that you wish to learn. So do check out our content. And now, if you wish to learn Django more in depth, if you want to make projects, get certified, have jobs, so on and so forth, let me show you how you can do that. So our website offers a Django certification and training course. It's instructor-led and 32 hours, and it's jam-packed with several exercises and project work, so you can get your hands on these things and you can get some real experience. After that, you will get certification as well as job assistance. You will get flexible schedule, lifetime free upgrade. So if anything changes in Django as a technology, we will update our course and you will have access to that course forever. And we have a 24/7 lifetime support access. So you'll learn a lot in this course, and some of the things that you will learn are sequences and file operations. Firstly, you will learn the introduction, then you will learn the sequences and file operations. Then we'll move on to learning regular expressions, packages, sorting, exceptions, all the basics in Python. Then we'll learn how to implement object-oriented programming. Then we'll move on to debugging and databases. And then we'll start learning Django after we have cleared all our basics. In Django, we'll learn templates and forms, models, and web pages that are dynamically generated. We'll learn serialization, and we'll end with learning XML and JSON with Python. So this is what the certification will look like. And this certification is recognized by top 80 plus MNCs like Ericsson, Cisco, Cognizant, Sony, Musicma, so on and so forth. If you wish to take a sample of how the course would go, we have a sample on our website. You can check that out. You can read the reviews as well. It's one of the most highly reviewed courses on our websites. I'm sure after all of this you have a lot of questions, and you can read through the FAQ section of our website to take a look if your question is answered there, or if it's not answered there, which is quite possible. You can contact us anytime you wish to. You can get in contact with our course advisors. They are available 24/7, 365 days in a year. And you can contact us by calling us on the numbers that are displayed on your screen, whether you are from India or outside India. And you can contact us via email at sales@intellipaat.com. Our course advisors are willing to talk to you. They are available 24/7 whenever you wish to use their services. They'll help you figure out which course you want and how you can use the courses that are available to your advantage. So thank you so much, guys, and without further ado, I'll see you next time. Thank you.